When in your bitch, raincoat on chest, that's how much she get wet. Hey, I'm flipping the bird is a word. I'm flipping the bird is a word. I'm flipping that police and nerds. Nothing outside the base. Flipping the bird, that police and nerds. I'm flipping the bird is a word.
No. I'm hyped up right now. I got my beanie on, I got a new GPU in. It's time to take a look and see if a $25 V4800 is worth your time and worth your money in 2018. Today, my job is going to be to teach you a little bit about this FirePRO, some of its specs, some of its benchmarks, and to see if it's worth your money in 2018. Diving deep into the chlamydia of eBay, this GPU here costs you $24.99. I personally found it for $5 out in the wild, but that is not a price everybody will find this for, and I understand that. So on eBay, you can usually find this card going for about $24.99 to about $30 wherever you live in the world. This is not counting European prices. Maybe I'll put euro on the screen, but I'm not sure about that yet. So anywhere from $25 to $30 is what you will pay for this card, and that's what I'm going to be basing my review off of today, whether the $25 FirePRO is even worth it if you want to play any games in 2018. The Redwood XT GL GPU variant, well known as the ATI FirePRO v4800, is built on the 40nm Terascale 2 architecture. The GPU was released on April 26, 2010. It launched for $189 US, has 627 million transistors, and features a PCI 2.0 x16 interface. On board, you're getting 1GB of GDDR5 running through a 128-bit bus, giving you a total bandwidth of 57 GB a second. One of the biggest selling points of this card is the fact that it is a power connector-less, single-slot design GPU. It has 2 display ports and 1 DVI port. It's 6.6 inches long and has no PCIe power connector, only requiring 69 watts through the PCIe bus. Being a mid-range workstation GPU in 2010 meant it supported all the newest APIs, including DirectX 11.0, OpenGL 4.3, and OpenCL 1.2 support. For these GPUs, I like to overclock them to get the most performance for your dollar. So on stock clocks, we have 775 MHz and 3600 MHz for the core and the memory respectively. And we overclocked the core to 915 MHz and the GPU RAM to 3900 MHz. Some of the other nerd specs include 400 shading units, 20 TMUs, 8 ROPs, and 8 compute units, giving us about a floating point performance of 620 gigaflops. The specs of my test bench are an Intel Xeon E5540 overclocked to 4.1 GHz, a 4-core 8-thread Xeon based on the X58 platform. I'm also using a Gigabyte X58 UD3R SLI motherboard along with 18 GB of 1600 MHz RAM. You can find more in-depth specs at the description down below with the 3D Mark Firestrike link. Before we go over the benchmarks, I want everybody to understand something. This is a server grade workstation card. This was not meant to be a gaming card. I think you guys understand is that a graphics card is meant to do graphical tasks. However, this driver is not designed to do gaming graphical tasks. So do not expect the world from this card, even though it will deliver a decent performance for $25. With that said, let's move over to the first benchmark of the day, Grand Theft Auto 5, which I'm going to be doing right over here. Let's go get into that right now. Kicking off our benchmarking session in the new year of 2018, welcome to 2018 everybody. So we're going to be doing GTA 5 on the normal settings at 720p. We ended up getting an average of 69.2 frames per second with a maximum of 104 and a minimum of 38.
It's a bunch of gibberish, you motherfuckers act like I ain't strapped. Run up on them like straight up, I don't give a fuck. Down for it up.
The FirePRO driver is absolutely kicking butt here, and at 1080p we got an average of 40.6 average frames per second compared to 69.2 at 720p. Moving on from GTA 5, a very difficult obstacle, Battlefield 1. At 720p, low settings, we ended up getting a very playable average of 40.5 frames per second with a maximum of 49 and a minimum of 30. Again, this is going to be a very familiar thing. If you want to play these games at 1080p, it's going to half the frame rate exactly. So we ended up getting a 22 FPS average at 1080p. Booting up Overwatch, we set it at 720p medium settings. We scored an average of 61.2 frames per second with a maximum of 81 and a minimum of 48. The FirePRO once again delivering an amazing online gaming experience on the cheap. As you guys can see, there was really no screen tearing, and AAA titles from the last 3 to 4 years will do 720p 60 just fine. And if it's a newer game, pretty much 720p 30.
Down for whatever.
Hell yeah, feller. On League of Legends 1920 by 1080 at the medium settings, we scored an average of 169.3 frames per second with a maximum of 250 and a minimum of 119. Proving to be an awesome MOBA gameage experience.
This nigga juiced up on some movie shit, trying to get Valens down for whatever on this moody shit. This nigga's like chill.
Our FirePRO made light work of Cuphead at 1920 by 1080, scoring an average of 60.1 frames per second with a maximum of 62 and a minimum of 51. Another outstanding experience delivered by our cheap budget FirePRO.
Stop the ride, y'all boys wait for me, I'ma be right back. Pass the blunt to this nigga, open the door and dip with a strap like straight up, I don't give a.
Next up, we got Far Cry Primal here, getting my Primal Rage on. We got the average of 28 frames per second with a maximum of 34 and a minimum of 26 at the 720p low settings.
Down for whatever.
Next up in the stack of benchmark chlamydia, we got Prey 2017 at the 1280 by 720 low settings. We got an average of 34.5 frames per second with a maximum of 57 and a minimum of 22. Not an amazing gaming experience, but a playable one nonetheless, and the FirePRO is really impressing here. For the final commentated benchmark, we're going to be going over 3D Mark Firestrike, the basic benchmark that every GPU owner should go through just to make sure if your GPU is up to spec and is clocking correctly. We ended up getting a graphics score of 1300 right on the nose and a total score with our entire system of 1271. This ends up smacking our card right in between the 7470 Crossfire and the 6670. Even with this really cut down professional high-end grade driver, we are doing really well in all the games and everything has been pretty playable for the most part at this point. Now, I like to test these GPUs in a huge amount of games. That gives my channel the really in-depth review factor. And I'm also going to be doing a driver section and a noise section along with the conclusion at the end. This section will be about 3 minutes long. It'll be just straight data, straight benchmarks. If you want to skip it, it'll be about 3 minutes long. Go to the timestamp down below. Check it out. You guys can skip right to the next part. I'll see you guys in the in-depth benchmarks. Generally, when you're thinking of a professional FirePRO driver, you're usually thinking of a really rock-solid, stable Windows 7 driver that's usually designed for Vegas, Premiere, stuff like that. However, to my surprise, February's driver from last year, 15.201, actually was rock-solid in Windows 10 64-bit. I had no crashes, no hiccups, no nothing. Perfect driver. Hopefully we get another update, but this is actually a pretty good driver for Windows 10, and I was impressed here. This is a sound test of the ATI FirePRO at idle clocks. This is a test of the FirePRO under load. This is the FirePRO at maximum fan speed. Now finally, I'm going to come to the conclusion on whether you should buy this FirePRO for gaming or not. Now I have used this card for 2 weeks. Yes, I've used it for 2 weeks. And I have done video editing on it, I've done gaming on it, and I am impressed at what kind of performance you get from a $30 FirePRO in 2018. This card is very similar to the HD 5670 and the 6670 released by AMD around the same time. However, this GPU is much more common, and people are going to want to be getting rid of these because they're going to be upgrading. So this is definitely a comparable option around the $30 to $25 price point, and you should definitely consider it. This GPU is not only a very, very quiet GPU, a very, very efficient GPU, but also a decently powerful one. And that is going to be the end of my in-depth, huge ATI FirePRO v4800 review, and I hope you enjoyed it because I am exhausted of thinking and talking about this card. So thank you so much for everybody watching. I have a Patreon in the description down below. Leave a like and leave a comment and leave a subscription. Remember to hit that notification bell so you know whenever I make a GPU video next time. Thank you so much for watching, everybody. I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day, and I'll catch you again next time. Peace.
This way. Still some time.
Hey, did you know that I started putting my GPU edits on a separate channel? Link in the description down below. Click on the screen to watch my latest video or a random video based on your recommended.